That eerie moment when your dog freezes, ears perked, staring at nothing, they might be sensing something you can't. And sometimes it saves lives. Have you ever wondered if your furry companion could be your guardian angel in disguise? Today we're diving into the remarkable story of Max, an ordinary rescue dog with an extraordinary ability to sense danger before it strikes. What happened that stormy night in the mountains changed everything his owner, Sarah, believed about animal instincts. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some scientists believe our dogs might possess a sixth sense that humans have long forgot. Sarah never considered herself a dog person. Growing up, her family had cats, aloof, independent creatures that required minimal maintenance and emotional investment, perfect for her busy lifestyle as a freelance photographer constantly on the move for assignments. But life has a funny way of changing our carefully constructed plans. It all started 3 years ago when Sarah was volunteering at a local animal shelter for a photography project. Capturing images of the animals helped increase adoption rates, and she found satisfaction in using her talents for a good cause. That's when she first saw Max, a 2-year-old German Shepherd mix with soulful amber eyes that seemed to look straight through her. He wasn't even supposed to be in the photo shoot that day, Sarah recalls in our interview. The shelter workers told me he was too anxious around strangers, too unpredictable for adoption photos, but there was something about him that caught my attention. While setting up her equipment, Sarah noticed Max watching her intently from his kennel. Unlike the other dogs that barked excitedly or cowered in corners, Max sat perfectly still, his gaze never wavering. On a whim, she asked if she could try photographing him. The moment they brought him into the studio area, his entire demeanor changed, Sarah explains. It was like he knew exactly what I wanted. He posed perfectly, tilted his head at just the right angles. I've worked with professional human models who couldn't take direction that well. The photographs of Max turned out to be stunning, capturing both his handsome features and something indescribable behind his eyes that spoke of intelligence and depth. When Sarah returned the following week to deliver the finished photos, she learned that Max was scheduled to be euthanized due to lack of space and his unadoptable status. I couldn't explain it, even to myself, Sarah admits with a slight shake of her head. I had no business adopting a dog. My apartment didn't allow pets, I traveled constantly, and I knew nothing about caring for a dog, especially one with anxiety issues. But I couldn't let them put him down. Through a combination of pleading, promising, and paying extra security deposits, Sarah managed to bring Max home. The first few weeks were challenging. Max suffered from separation anxiety, was fearful of sudden movements, and clearly carried emotional scars from his past. There were moments I seriously questioned my decision, Sarah says. I remember calling my mom in tears one night after he destroyed my favorite pair of boots and somehow managed to turn on the kitchen sink, flooding the apartment. She reminded me that relationships, even with animals, take work. Gradually, they developed a rhythm. Sarah adjusted her schedule to accommodate Max's needs, taking him on morning runs and finding pet-friendly cafes where she could edit photos while he lounged at her feet. Max, in turn, seemed to blossom under her care. His anxiety lessened, his playful personality emerged, and he proved to be remarkably intelligent. He learned commands after just a couple of repetitions, Sarah explains, and he seemed to understand concepts I hadn't explicitly taught him, like bringing me my phone when it rang or fetching my keys when I said we were going out. But it wasn't until last winter that Sarah discovered Max possessed something far more valuable than intelligence, something that defied rational explanation. For her birthday, Sarah had booked a weekend getaway at a mountain cabin about 3 hours from the city. The place was advertised as pet-friendly, so Max would accompany her. They set out on a Friday afternoon, planning to spend 2 nights enjoying the solitude and scenic beauty. The weather forecast predicted some snow, but nothing severe, Sarah remembers. I packed extra supplies just in case, including food and water for both of us, emergency blankets, and a first aid kit. I've always been cautious about mountain weather, having done nature photography in similar regions. They arrived just before sunset. The cabin was rustic but charming, a single large room with a sleeping loft, wood-burning stove, small kitchen area, and a covered porch offering spectacular views of the surrounding forest. Max seemed to love it immediately, running circles around the property and exploring every corner with his nose to the ground. After settling in and unpacking, Sarah lit the stove and prepared a simple dinner. Outside, light snow had begun to fall, creating a magical winter scene. She took some photos of the landscape bathed in twilight, with Max's silhouette against the white backdrop. Everything felt perfect. We went to bed around 10 p.m., Sarah continues. I was exhausted from the drive and the fresh mountain air. Max usually sleeps at the foot of my bed, but that night he seemed restless. He kept getting up, pacing around, then lying down again with a heavy sigh. Around midnight, Sarah was awakened by Max's cold nose pressing insistently against her cheek. He was whining softly but urgently, a sound she'd never heard him make before. I figured he needed to go outside, so I groggily pulled on my boots and coat, she recalls. But when I opened the door, he wouldn't go out. Instead, he grabbed the sleeve of my coat and pulled me toward my bag. Confused and slightly annoyed at being awake in the middle of the night, Sarah tried to understand what Max wanted. He kept circling between her and the door, but whenever she opened it, he backed away, whining more insistently. That's when I noticed how strong the wind had become, Sarah says. The snow was falling much heavier than before, and there was a distant rumbling sound I couldn't identify. Trusting Max's obvious distress, Sarah decided to pack up and leave, despite the late hour and deteriorating conditions. She quickly gathered their essential belongings while Max paced anxiously, occasionally barking toward the ceiling. I had to practically drag him to the car, she remembers. He didn't want to go outside at all, but he also clearly wanted us to leave the cabin. It was the strangest behavior I'd ever seen from him. With the car loaded and Max finally in the passenger seat, Sarah navigated the increasingly snow-covered access road. The wind howled, reducing visibility to mere feet in front of the vehicle. About half a mile from the cabin, they reached the main mountain road and found it completely blocked by fallen trees and snow. I realized we weren't going anywhere that night, Sarah says. We'd have to wait until morning and hope road crews would clear the way. I considered returning to the cabin, but something about Max's behavior made me hesitate. Instead, they pulled into a small roadside rest area with an emergency shelter, little more than a reinforced shed with benches. Sarah parked as close as possible to the structure, and they settled in to wait out the night in the car, with the engine running periodically to provide heat. Max finally calmed down once we were in the car, Sarah notes. He still seemed alert, but the frantic energy was gone. He kept his head on my lap as I dozed off and on through the night. When dawn broke, Sarah was awakened by the sound of helicopters. Looking out the snow-covered window, she was stunned by what she saw. The mountainside above where their cabin stood had collapsed in a massive avalanche. The cabin itself was completely buried under tons of snow, rock, and uprooted trees. If we had stayed there, Sarah's voice trails off, the implication clear. The rescue workers who eventually reached us confirmed that anyone in the cabin's path would have had virtually no chance of survival. News of the narrow escape spread quickly through local media. Experts who investigated the avalanche explained that a combination of fresh, heavy snow on top of an unstable layer, coupled with strong winds, had created the perfect conditions for the disaster. But what had Max sensed that night? How had he known they needed to leave? Dr. Alina Richards, a veterinary behaviorist specializing in canine cognition at Pacific Northwest University, offers some scientific perspective on Max's seemingly supernatural warning. Dogs possess sensory capabilities far superior to humans in many respects, Dr. Richards explains. Their hearing is approximately 4 times more sensitive than ours, able to detect higher frequencies and much fainter sounds. They can hear the subtle creaking and shifting of snow layers that would be completely imperceptible to human ears. She also points to dogs' incredible olfactory powers. They can detect scent particles in concentrations as low as parts per trillion. In an avalanche scenario, there might be subtle changes in air composition as snow pack shifts and compresses, releasing different odors from the soil and vegetation underneath. But Dr. Richards acknowledges that these explanations don't fully account for all aspects of anticipatory behavior in dogs. There's mounting evidence suggesting some animals, including dogs, may be sensitive to changes in barometric pressure, electromagnetic fields, or even subtle seismic activity preceding major events. We're just beginning to understand these mechanisms. Sarah has her own theory. I think Max somehow knew because he cared about me. It sounds unscientific, but the bond between us seemed to elevate his natural instincts to something more, a determination to keep me safe. In the year following their close call, Sarah has collected dozens of similar stories from around the world, dogs alerting their owners to fires before smoke detectors activated, leading family members to unconscious loved ones during medical emergencies, or behaving strangely just before earthquakes struck. One particularly striking account came from Maria Gonzalez in California, whose Labrador retriever began acting erratically 20 minutes before a 5.8 magnitude earthquake in 2023. Security footage from her home showed the dog running in circles, barking at walls, and trying to herd family members toward the home's doorway. When the quake hit, the family was already safely gathered in the most structurally sound part of their house. There's a pattern in these stories, Sarah observes. The dogs who seem most attuned to danger are often those with the strongest bonds to their humans. It's as if their protective instincts amplify their already superior senses. This theory aligns with research on the coevolution of humans and dogs. Archaeological evidence suggests that wolves began their transformation into domestic dogs at least 15,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. Unlike many domesticated animals, dogs evolved specifically to understand and cooperate with humans. We've literally evolved together, explains Dr. Richards. Natural selection favored wolves that could read human cues and intentions, and eventually, dogs developed unique cognitive abilities specifically for interacting with humans. Some research indicates that dogs can interpret human facial expressions and emotional states better than any other non-human species, including primates. This special interspecies connection may explain why dogs often seem to anticipate their owners' needs or emotions. Studies have demonstrated that when humans and their dogs interact positively, both species experience increased levels of oxytocin, the hormone associated with bonding and trust. The biochemical foundation of the human-dog bond is remarkably similar to the bond between parents and children, Dr. Richards notes. This deep connection may enhance a dog's motivation to monitor their human's environment for potential threats. For Sarah, the scientific explanations are interesting but secondary to the profound change in her relationship with Max after their Avalanche experience. I went from being someone who saw him as a pet, an animal I was responsible for, to recognizing him as a sentient being with capabilities I may never fully understand, she reflects. There's a mutual respect between us now. I've become more attuned to his signals, and I think that's made him even more protective. This heightened awareness has manifested in smaller ways since the avalanche. Sarah describes instances where Max has alerted her to a gas leak in her apartment building by refusing to enter, warned her away from a hiking trail minutes before a poisonous snake was spotted, and even detected a cancerous mole on her shoulder by repeatedly sniffing and gently pawing at it. The mole looked completely normal to me and my doctor, Sarah says, but Max was obsessed with it. He would whine and nose at that specific spot until I finally got it checked out of sheer annoyance. The dermatologist found early-stage melanoma that hadn't yet changed appearance. The surgeon told me Max likely saved my life a second time. Can all dogs sense danger with such precision? Dr. Richards believes the potential exists in most dogs, but certain factors enhance this ability. Breeds historically used for search and rescue, hunting, or protection tend to have more highly developed senses, she explains. German Shepherds like Max are especially noteworthy for their environmental awareness and protective instincts. But training, experience, and the strength of the human-animal bond play equally important roles. Various organizations now specifically train dogs to detect everything from cancer and blood sugar fluctuations to impending seizures and panic attacks. These service dogs provide life-saving alerts for people with various medical conditions. Jennifer Ashton, founder of Medical Alert Dogs Association, explains, "We're essentially harnessing natural canine abilities and refining them through positive reinforcement. The dogs learn to associate certain sense or behavioral changes with rewards, making them even more attentive to these subtle signals." Ashton's organization has placed over 200 medical alert dogs with individuals suffering from conditions like epilepsy, diabetes, and severe allergies. In follow-up studies, 87% of recipients reported that their dogs consistently alerted them to medical emergencies before they were consciously aware of symptoms. The most remarkable cases are the seizure alert dogs, Ashton says. "We don't fully understand how they can detect an oncoming seizure up to 45 minutes before it occurs, before any medical device can detect it, but the evidence that they can is overwhelming." This unexplained ability parallels Max's avalanche warning. Both suggest that dogs may perceive aspects of reality that humans cannot, whether through superior known senses or some additional perceptive capability we haven't yet identified. Sarah believes these stories highlight something many pet owners intuitively understand, but struggle to articulate: that the relationship between humans and dogs transcends the conventional understanding of animal companionship. After our experience, I started talking to other dog owners about whether their pets had ever warned them about danger, Sarah says. Almost everyone had at least one story: dogs refusing to let their owners drive during what would have been a major accident, waking families during house fires before smoke detectors activated, or finding people who were lost or injured. One such story came from Robert Chang, whose border collie led rescuers to him after he fell into a ravine during a solo hike, breaking both legs. The dog had stayed with him for hours before somehow understanding that she needed to find help, running over 2 miles to the nearest ranger station and barking until someone followed her back. How did she know to go for help rather than just stay with me? Robert wondered when sharing his story. And how did she know exactly where to find people who could help? There's something happening in these situations that goes beyond what we typically attribute to animal intelligence. Dr. Richards suggests that these remarkable behaviors may reflect an evolutionary advantage of the human-dog partnership. Throughout history, humans with dogs who could warn of dangers likely had higher survival rates. Similarly, dogs that proved useful to humans received care and protection. It's a perfect example of mutualistic evolution. This perspective frames the seemingly mysterious bond between humans and dogs as the product of thousands of generations of interdependence, not mystical, but still profound in its implications. For Sarah, the experience with Max transformed her life in unexpected ways. She has shifted her photography career to focus on dogs and their owners, capturing the special connection they share. Her photo series, Guardians, The Dogs Who Save Us, has been featured in national exhibitions and led to a book contract. I want people to look more deeply at the animals sharing their homes, Sarah explains. Not just as pets, but as remarkable beings with capabilities we're still discovering. The relationship can be so much richer when we approach it with humility and openness. She's also become an advocate for rescue dogs like Max, volunteering her time to photograph shelter animals and sharing her story to encourage adoption. Max was labeled unadoptable because of his anxiety, Sarah reminds us. If I had believed that assessment, neither of us would be here today. How many other amazing dogs are overlooked because we can't see past their temporary fear or confusion? Max, now 5 years old, shows no signs that his extraordinary experience has changed him. He still chases squirrels in the park, still steals Sarah's socks, still greets her with the same exuberant joy, whether she's been gone for 5 minutes or 5 hours. But Sarah sees him differently. Every morning when I wake up to his face, I remember that I'm alive because of him. It's impossible to take that for granted. As our interview concludes, Max rests his head on Sarah's knee, amber eyes watchful and alert. There's something profound in his steady gaze, something that transcends the ordinary boundaries between species. The most important thing I've learned, Sarah says, stroking his ears gently, is to listen when he's trying to tell me something. We think we're so advanced with our technology and language, but there are aspects of the world we've lost the ability to perceive. Dogs haven't forgotten. For thousands of years, dogs have been our companions, protectors, and helpers. But perhaps their greatest gift is reminding us that our understanding of the world is limited, that there are realities beyond our perception, dangers we cannot sense, and connections we cannot measure. The next time your dog acts strangely, refusing to enter a room, barking at seemingly nothing, or waking you in the middle of the night, remember Max and Sarah. That inexplicable behavior might just be your own guardian angel at work, perceiving what you cannot.